Hello, UK Crime Book Club. Allan nice and chill, Doug looking terrified. It's a great start.
This could be the end of my nascent career before it got started.
Congratulations, both. We are here to discuss your nominations for the Bloody Scotland Debut Prize, and you must just both be absolutely thrilled. But first, introduce yourselves, show us the book cover, and tell us a little bit about your nominated books.
Okay.
So, Allan.
I'll go first then. Thank you very much, Sam, for having us both on this. It's a great opportunity to speak to a much wider group, so thank you for that. My book is called The Silent House of Sleep. It's subtitled or supertitled a Dr. Jack Cuthbert mystery. This is a period murder mystery. It's the first in a series featuring the main protagonist, Dr. Jack Cuthbert. He is a Scotsman working in London with Scotland Yard between the wars. And he's what we would call today a forensic pathologist, although that term wasn't actually used at the time. As a main character, he's quite a complex man. He's in his 30s. He is strikingly tall for the time period. He's very good to look at. He's adept at his job, but in the background, of course, like so many men of his generation in that time period, he suffers from his time in the First World War, particularly in the trenches. Moreover, he also lives with the closely guarded secret of his homosexuality. Indeed, in a world where he would actually be regarded as a criminal, he is so closeted that he really hasn't come to terms with his own sexuality himself. As for the plot, it starts off with a student going missing, and when not one but two bodies are uncovered in a shallow grave, Cuthbert is faced with probably one of the most baffling forensic puzzles of his career. He's working for the first time with a new detective chief inspector at Scotland Yard. He's keen to prove his mettle, and he needs to come up with an explanation for what he's found. It's set in an era when science is just beginning to have an impact on forensics, and Cuthbert is forced to use every tool at his disposal in the time period to try and solve this. But in solving the case, he not only uncovers a very gruesome mode of murder, he also uncovers quite a nightmarish secret from his own past, and really finds that he's brought rather more back from the war than just his memories.
Thank you. Doug?
No, I can't follow that.
No, I don't think you can. No. Go on.
Blood runs deep.
We get the camera the right way around. Did you do that on purpose? You warned me you were going to be a handful.
Of course I did. Yeah, so Blood Runs Deep, I think, and I hope I'm not wrong in this, or I've been incredibly self-indulgent. I think a lot of people's first books have a lot of them in it, because whatever drives us to want to write. Well, in my case, what drove me to want to write was the world made no bloody sense to me. We'll maybe come on to it later, but for various reasons, until my early 50s, I was just a mess, and life was just. My favorite expression became "stop the world, I want to get off." So to get back to your question, Sam, this is my problem. I'm wondering already. Malky McCulloch. The people that know me well will think that I am Malky and that he is me, but it's not quite as simple as that. The only thing Malky has that I have is a rage, actually, at the way the world is. We're awful to each other as a species. We're all horrible to each other as a species. And we all have the capacity in us to do the worst things if driven to it by circumstance. And modern life, modern society drives people into corners that they often have to take desperate measures to get out of. You know, I'm just in the middle of brainstorming book 4, and it reflects that theme. It's going to be something about a young man who is forced to steal a top-of-the-range mobile phone because his daughter is getting bullied at school because she doesn't have the most recent mobile phone. And he's never done anything wrong in his life. So this is why I write, because even good people like this man can be driven to do what the rest of us will complacently call bad things. But you don't know the background. You don't know anybody who passes you on the street. You don't know what's going on in their head. You don't know what kind of a day they've had so far. So that's what Malky has. He has this rage about justice, which is why I joined the polis in the first place. At the start of the story, am I wandering already? Am I over talking too much?
Doug, you're great. Carry on.
At the start of the story, he's just returning from 6 months enforced leave because his mother died in a horrible house fire that also badly wounded his dad and wounded him as well. And typically, well, maybe the second thing Malky shares with me is that he feels responsible for everything. Everything that goes wrong around him, every misunderstanding he has with people, every time he thinks he's seen shades of grey in something, other people are only seeing black and white and all this sort of stuff. He blames himself. And over his lifetime, he's learned to assume that stuff's his fault, So even though he wasn't there, he rushed to the scene as soon as it happened. He had nothing to do with the fire. He carries around this guilt for his mum's death. And the fact that he can't actually rationalize it and concretely pin it down to something just makes it worse, because he's got a desperate need to feel guilty for it, to feel culpable for it, but he can't. And that's why he's so messed up. I nearly said a bad word there. That's why he's so messed up. So his first case that he's called out, it first looks like a simple hit and run. And it very quickly, with the aim of his long-suffering and long-suffered sidekick, DC Steph Lang, they realised that this was no hit and run. This was attempted murder. And as he peels away at the case, it turns uglier and darker. And he's... no spoilers, Doug. No spoilers, Doug. But by the end of it, things are concluded. But he'll carry the case with him for the rest of his life and never feel good about it.
I feel like both of you are doing that. Now, I've read the first book in both series. So, Allan, you've got 4, the 4th one coming out this year. Doug, when does your 3rd one come out?
October.
Have you got a date yet? So you've both got something coming out in October. Okay. So you've both kind of given your detective, not just detectives, sorry, pathologist, detectives. You've given people something that is going to be carried on through the series, no matter how much resolution they may find to some elements of their stories and their history that you've both mentioned. There's surely going to be something carried through, because one of the things that we discussed in the group, some people really like the detectives having, or their main characters, sorry, Allan, having a real happy home life. And some people, like myself, prefer the home life encroaching in some way, because I don't see how it couldn't. You've got people who've got very difficult jobs and it's impossible to not have that. So, Allan, how much did you really think about the future when you were writing the first book in the series?
When I was writing the first one, I was aware that there was a possibility of perhaps taking these characters forward, not just the main character, but the cast of characters that you have around them. But I suppose writing the first one, I was very concerned that, well, I've got to get one under my belt before I start thinking about that sort of dream. But as soon as I'd finished it, I realised that I had more to say. I think for me, one of the big things about any kind of literature is that it's about people, it's about characters, and it's about how they change and grow and develop, how they face challenges. And obviously in crime fiction, it's really a wonderful way of putting people into very difficult positions, very challenging positions, whether it's professionally or personally. So it's allowing you to exercise these characters. And even during the first book, the main character, Jack Cuthbert, has changed. At the beginning, one reviewer told me he didn't like him at first because he was just a big arrogant doctor, and he was a big arrogant doctor. But at the same time, I knew he wasn't. He was a lot more than that. He had a lot more humanity. and what you were seeing on the surface was not at all really what was going on inside him. And I wanted to slowly reveal that, peel back the layers. But at the end of one book, I hadn't finished that, and I thought there's a lot more to say about this person. So I was very aware that I wanted to take the stories forward. I also wanted to develop the other characters as well and reveal more about them and about their motivations. And the first book itself is actually written in a dual timeline, because I wanted to try and give some backstory to Cuthbert to explain why he was the way he was. So we see him as a medical student in Edinburgh before the First World War, and then his experiences during the war as well, which very much shape him. And I wanted to have this backstory, if you like, just not just for fun, just to. I like backstories. I like to know what motivates people. I didn't want it just for fun. I wanted to have an important role to play in the overall plot as well. And although there are two timelines, they actually converge right at the end, so that you then realise why you've been told all of this in the past. And I like that so much that I actually repeated that in the second book as well, in the terms of having a dual timeline, being allowed to explore different characters or their pasts to try and reveal motivation, whatever. It was definitely, by the end of it, I was convinced that I could write more of this, and I have done. I've done a second and a third book now, and moving on to a fourth one. And I'm thoroughly enjoying the characters. I enjoy spending time with them. And I suppose if you're an author, if you don't like your characters, then you're going to have a tough time going to work with a lot of people you don't like. But if you actually enjoy spending time with characters, it's a wonderful way to develop relationships with them. And I don't know about you, Doug, but I find that after a while they start talking to you and they start telling you their stories as well. And that's, for me, a big part of the joy of writing.
Yeah. To me, Malky and Steph are not figments of my imagination anymore. My mind does this mental trick where they're real people somewhere, and I just somehow have a view on their lives. Yeah. To go back to your question, Sam, I wrote something with serious potential, because what I want to write about, what I want to but what I want to explore is the damage that police work does to police officers. Mm-hmm. My books are already being pigeonholed as police procedurals, which I never wanted, but I knew would happen. But I wanted to write books about people who happen to be police officers and the damage it does. So if I ever wrap up Malky and Steph's story and move on to something else, it will be about some other kind of person who gets damaged by life and by their work and that sort of stuff. So to answer the question, you can't explore all that in one book. Yeah. I knew I would have to show the progression of the damage to the characters and their own, I hate the word, their own journey as they try to redeem themselves and learn to live with themselves. So you can't do that in just one book. So I always knew that there was going to be a series of books. I just don't know how long I'll stretch it.
I'm just looking at some of the comments from people who are watching. So Patricia Forsyth, has said, I think you've both developed your characters, which is obviously, that's true. And you've both given a lot of thought. You've mentioned a bit about your teams, both of you. You've both given a lot of thought to that. They are real people that live inside your heads. They are, and inside the readers as well. You're getting some really good reviews, and it's partly to do with the way you've created your teams. You've crafted them very carefully, both of you. Mm-hmm. So, Allan, how was that for you, creating a team for the first time?
A team of characters, you mean? Yeah. I was very aware that any character in the book had to really be authentic. Mm. I suppose one of the things I don't like about reading certain books is when it's all about the plot and the characters are almost a secondary consideration, that they're just two-dimensional. They're just not believable in any way. Whereas I wanted people to actually engage with the characters and actually either both love them and hate them, depending on who they are, but to be interested in them enough to actually want to know more. So I really want people at the end of Silent House of Sleep to actually shut the last page and go, right, I need to know more about this guy. I want to take it forward, because I wanted to know more. So that's why I wanted to try and make it like that. And I also was aware that he needed people around him, people who were very different, to flesh it all out, because we all exist and often work quite difficult working relationships with people who are very different from ourselves. So I've given him a detective chief inspector who's actually in some ways quite similar to him, personality-wise, which means that they grate each other. They're both alphas, they're both quite aggressive, they're both quite arrogant, and therefore have a very sticky start to the relationship, but then grow to realise that they have a lot to gain by working together. I've given him an assistant who's a young pathologist who is teaching as much as anything else, and he is a very different personality again, which of course is a lovely contrast to sometimes the darker moments in Cuthbert. I've given him a rather enigmatic housekeeper, which she's going to have a lot more story to be told, and also the sergeant, the stalwart sergeant, who is, in one way he's the go-to cop in it all, and the one who's sensible and holds it all together. But again, there's a little bit more to him as well, and I want to try and peel back the layers of people, peel back the layers of the onion, so that we can start to really get to grips with these people and understand the pain that they've gone through, the trauma they've had, the joy that they're having, the kind of families that they're living in. Because no one is completely happy, no one is completely sad, no one is completely dark or light. We want to see these people as real. And I think good characters have that kind of, many characteristics. They have many layers to them. And that's what I've tried to create.
I think that's what I was long-windedly trying to say in my question, that, every single person on the planet has got shades of light and dark. Nobody's got, we might have times in our life that are perfect and wonderful and great, but we all know that doesn't last. So I like the realism that you've created. And Doug?
Well, I might be about to disappoint a lot of people, but I don't do a lot of advanced character building. I don't interview my characters. I don't draw up character sketches. I don't do detailed backgrounds to them or anything like that. I have an idea of what kind of person each is. So that idea, that fundamental idea of what makes a person tick, the engine at the heart of them drives how they react to things. And I always keep an eye on it to make sure that it evolves sensibly. That I don't suddenly have them doing things completely out of character. I'm afraid I don't plan my characters massively in advance. Was that the question? Yeah.
We were just talking about how you built your team of people, but yeah. I don't think that's anything that's going to disappoint anyone, Doug, because I think everyone seems to have their own style. I don't think any two authors have ever really given me the same answer on how they build their work and how things happen. So I don't think that's disappointing. But talk to me about how you built your team, because yours is a team. It's a police team.
Well, funnily enough, the biggest decision I had to make was whether I knew I was going to have a main character and a sidekick, but I would do all I could to spin it so that it was not spin it, twist it so that it was different. The biggest problem I had was I was wary of having yet another middle-aged white detective, which is what I feel I should write because it's the closest to what I know. And if I had to try to make Steph the DS and Malky the DC, it would have been not new, but it would have been a bit different and all that sort of stuff. But I wouldn't never think I could do it justice because I can't put myself in the head of a woman. The one thing I've learned in my adult life is that as much as us mere men, because that's our full title, as much as us mere men can try to understand what it must be like to be a woman, the fears you have, the insecurities you have, the rage you have at the injustice that you see and all this, all that stuff, we're never going to get it. We are never going to get it. So I decided that there was too much danger if I tried to write Steph as the main character, the DS, and Malky's the DC. I'd just screw it up, basically. I nearly said the bad word again there. I would just screw it up and I would just end up insulting people. So I had to go for the old trope, the middle-aged white detective and his sidekick, but I knew that his sidekick needed to be a woman. And in fact, now I've only just realised this. Genuinely, folks, I've only just realised this. I never had a sister. I had a brother. And because of my family life, we were never particularly close. I always envied people who had a sister. And I've just realised this second that Steph is the sister I never had. Wow. So there you go. So I knew at the heart of it somewhere that it had to be a she, and she had to be that kind of character. You know, butch your arse whenever you need it, but only out of love. And that's what a sister does in my experience. So there you go. Steph is the sister I never had.
There was a line, actually, just while we're on Steph, there was a line that was something to the effect of, they were playing good cop, bad cop, her and Malky.
Yeah.
And he always has to be good cop because she doesn't have it in her.
Yeah.
And I thought that was hilarious. I thought you literally set the stall out there with that.
I get a bit concerned at the number of people that said, can we have Steph as a spin-off character in her own series? She kind of steals the show whenever she's in it. Yeah. If anybody particularly likes Steph, you'll know that you'll hopefully be happy to know that I really put Steph through the ringer in books 2 and 3. I mean, she goes through some real shite. And Malky has to, sorry, Allan, I'll keep this short. Malky has to learn, instead of leaning on her all the time, he has to learn to step up and grow up and be there for her.
I want to ask you both, do you have fun putting your characters through the ringer, or is it painful, or is it somewhere in between? So, Allan, how do you feel about kind of, you know, you both have to come up with these scenarios for your characters and you're leading them through them.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
how enjoyable is that to write, or does it freak you out at times?
No, it's very enjoyable. But I think if you're close enough to your characters, you're kind of going through it with them together in a way. And I suppose I don't know how I think probably in a slightly cinematic way. You know, I'm kind of watching what's happening, and I'm writing it down. So, you know, I'm seeing them actually in these situations, maybe Cuthbert at a crime scene, trying to unravel what's going on, maybe the police in an interview room with a difficult suspect that they're having a difficult time with. I'm seeing this in a very kind of vivid way, and trying to record it in a readable way. So I'm sort of there doing it with them. But it is enjoyable because I feel that these are the challenges that are going to allow us to learn a bit more about these people. If we just make them have a lovely time, you know, they're just having the whole books are just a long Sunday afternoon where they're reading the papers. not going to be great, is it? So we have to put them into situations. And the beauty of crime fiction is that you can do that very, very easily, whether it's a police officer, whether it's a pathologist, whether it's a potential victim. You know, they're suddenly in some of the worst situations they've ever been in their life, and you're seeing really what they're made of, and that to me is fun, and that's why I enjoy writing it.
I've got a comment here that says, it's from Sharon Birch. It says, I think you can write any character if you do it authentically, because if you've never killed anyone, you can still write about it. If you've never been a cop, many writers don't. Likewise with many other identity factors, and then ends with Doug, you're being too harsh on yourself.
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks for that.
Well, I was bound to throw that in. I really want to go to the purpose of your visit here, other than your fantastic books. Bloody Scotland debut prize. Now, what happens when you get that call? Do you get a call? Did Bob McDevitt ring you, or is that so? Allan, tell me about that.
Yeah, you get a call and it's a number you don't recognise, so you ignore it, and then you get a voicemail that says, you know, this is Bob McDevitt from bloody Scotland. Please call me, you know, at your earliest convenience. At that point, you have a heart attack and you think, oh, what's gone wrong? Maybe, you know, something's, you know, what's the situation here? Because you can't actually bring yourself to believe that you've possibly been shortlisted, and then he gives you the nice news that you have, and suddenly the world changes a little bit, which is rather lovely. And it's strange, it's surreal, it's really weird, but it's lovely.
Love that, Doug.
When I got the call from Bob, I said a lot of sweary words.
I'm shocked.
Words. Yes.
Allan, are you shocked? I'm shocked.
Yeah, no, it's not like him at all.
Shut up, by the way. I'm going to get you both at playtime, by the way. Right, without labouring the point and oversharing, some people who know me will know that I'm trying to think how I put this so I don't sound too thumb-sucky. I fundamentally believe that in some kind of cosmic way, I do not deserve any kind of success. Oh, stop shaking your head, Sam.
Stop. No, I refuse. I won't.
No, stop it, or I really will.
No,
I'll get you at playtime. There's something in me that feels it's. And I don't want lots of people commenting and turning this into a Doug therapy session. I love you all to bits, but that's not what this is about. I'm just being very, very open. There's a part of me that fundamentally believes that nothing I can do is ever going to be of value to anybody. And please don't. But that's what I feel fundamentally in my core. I didn't just think I wasn't in much of a chance of getting shortlisted. I fundamentally believed it wouldn't happen because it wouldn't be right. It would be cosmologically wrong. So when it happened, I actually said things to Bob like, no, I think you better do a recount or something. and I couldn't accept it. And to some extent, I still haven't accepted it. Even when I see the graphics appear online, I still haven't accepted it. And that's not, if I sound whiny, I don't mean to be. I've learned over my later adult life, since my early 50s, when my now amazing wife, Micah, what happened was she proposed to me, then made it conditional that the wedding would only happen if I saw a doctor about my depression, which was amazing. So I'm lucky. I'm one of the people that can be medicated, and I feel feel for people whose mental neurodivergencies cause them much more pain and distress than mine do, and they can't just be treated as simply as I do. Sorry, I had to get that in at some point. So that's where it all comes from. And I've also learned. I've lost my point. I've lost my thread. I do that a lot. I'm old, you know. I've learned through my life. You can only do what you can do. And sorry, I'll try and keep this short, but I discovered something I call a leap of faith. Now, I'm completely non-religious. I'm about as non-religious as anybody can be. But I learned that the word leap of faith can mean looking at, if you're lucky enough to have editors and bloggers and publishers and just friends you've met, crime writer tribe friends, repeatedly telling you can write, repeatedly telling you love they love your characters, repeatedly telling you you've got a talent or a gift or whatever you want to call it. In the end, you have to tell the poison parrot on your shoulder to piss off and stop talking shite, because they know what they're talking about. My head will always tell me I'm not worth this, I don't deserve this. But it's actually arrogant to assume that all these people can be wrong. Does that make sense?
It does.
There's an arrogance in assuming that all these people that do know what they're doing, do it professionally, really know what they're talking about, and have zero interest in sugarcoating things for you. To tell yourself that they're all wrong and you're right, that you're shite, you're actually shite, and you're going to get discovered any time now, is just arrogant and absolutely bloody stupid. So I had to learn that the long, painful way. And I'm going to stop now. I'm sorry, Allan. I'm taking up more time than I should. I apologise, mate.
Told you, my job to balance the time. We're not going to worry about that. Allan, when your debut came out, based on kind of Doug's growing confidence, is what we're going to call it. He's going to grow into his confidence. How were you writing your first crime novel?
Well, I have to say that I didn't intend to write a crime novel. I wanted to write about. I had always wanted to write fiction. I I'd been writing non-fiction for many years as part of my job, my life. I'm a doctor. I'm a pathologist. I worked in universities and so on. So I always had to write. I had to write lots of books, but mostly textbooks and factual books about pathology. So I always wanted to write fiction, and so it seemed very natural when I started on a fictional journey that I should write about what I know. I should write about a pathologist. So that seems easy. What was not maybe so easy was that I chose to place a pathologist in a time period that I wasn't familiar with, which was between the wars. I say not familiar with it, I haven't lived through it, but it's one of my favourite time periods because I think it's really an interesting time period. So I did that. And I really wanted to start writing a book about a character, this pathologist, and his experiences of being a pathologist at this time period where really, as I mentioned earlier on, science was just starting to have a big impact on the world of pathology. It was just changing for the very first time. They still didn't have anything like what we have today, but they were just starting to make it more of a scientific approach to things. And because of the nature of what he did, it very quickly, there was going to have to be some sort of deaths in it and bodies in it and whatever. But that very much started to take over as I was writing it. And lo and behold, it ends up as a crime novel. But I still think of it very much as the crime is a bit of a vehicle to be able to explore this character and the characters around him. As I said, I think crime novels is such a wonderful genre for doing that because it does place people in challenging situations. So that's how I came to end up writing a crime novel. And I enjoyed it so much, as I said, that I wanted to continue it. And that's why I've developed it into a series now. But it's not necessarily the only thing I'll ever write, or indeed the only thing I have written, because I have written other novels that probably will never see the light of day, that I've looked at different aspects of other things, but they're not remotely crime novels.
That means you've both got a novel in a drawer somewhere that's never seen the light of day.
Oh, yes.
There's no way of salvaging that, Alan. And then, Doug, I'm coming to you. But, Alan, no way of salvaging what was in there?
No, there is a way of salvaging it, but I think it will require a bit of... you learn a lot as you're writing novels. I'm sure Doug would agree that, the actual process of doing it, a lot of people want to write novels and, talk about it, but actually sitting down and doing it and getting to the end of it and then going through the whole process of getting to the point where you can actually put it out into the world is a bit of a slog. And I suppose of all the bits that we do as writers, I enjoy the actual sitting down and writing more than anything. All the other stuff that you have to do, all the editing, all the promotion, all the marketing, all the persuading people that it's any good, is quite challenging for me. I don't enjoy that. I don't think a lot of writers enjoy that part of it, but I actually like engaging with characters and writing. And the sooner I can get back to that, the better.
Doug?
Well, I do the opposite from Alan. I tell everybody my books are utter pish. I'm hoping that our psychology will make them buy them to check them out.
And I've seen you do it, Doug.
Yeah, if anybody hasn't seen the dedication I put in Pat Forsyth's copy, I'm definitely going to get her at playtime. She's got a smacking.
Oh, she's here. She's watching. There are a lot of comments from our Patsy.
That doesn't surprise me. I've forgotten the original question because I was actually so engrossed in what Alan was saying. It's so lovely to hear somebody else talking so much sense about stuff that never used to make sense to me, and it is slowly coming to make sense. Yeah. So thanks, Alan. I bet that's just learning from our tribe, isn't it? My favourite part of the process actually is, believe it or not, is the editing. Mm-hmm. Because, keep it short, when I'm writing the ideas, I'm thinking, this is probably pish. Nobody's going to want to read this. When I'm writing the first draft of the story, I'm still thinking, my central idea is probably pish, so the first draft's going to be pish. So that's one of my favourite words. I'm sorry.
Isn't the first draft supposed to be pish?
It's meant to be. Yeah, if it's not rubbish, you're doing it wrong. Yes. But certainly now that I have an editor, I mean, how amazing is that? I have an editor. I had to pay £800 to get I had to pay £800 and £500 to get two talented friends of mine, Neil Broadfoot and Gail Williams, who's vastly underrated. I mean, that woman can write.
Gail, as in GB Williams.
That's her, and she also writes amazing.
Her.
She writes as Abby Barden, steampunk, and she wrote books, five books, I think, about a character called Amethyst. And I hopefully paid her the greatest compliment I think I can, and that is that even if she took all the steampunk stuff out of it, which is why I wanted to read it, I still would have been drawn into the characters' lives and all that sort of stuff. So, yes, shameless plug, Abby Barden, GB Williams, check her out. She's worth it. So anyway, by the time we get to the edit stage, and my editor, who I have complete faith in because she doesn't sugarcoat it. My editor is the amazing Kate Gilby-Smith at Storm Publishing, by the way, and I call her Super Ed. All my emails start Dear Super Ed because she is. I cannot understand people that get precious about their books, and when they get it back covered in metaphorical red. That's not the right word, isn't it? Covered in word comments. I cannot understand people that get precious about it and resent it. It's everything should serve making the book better. And if that means you've written a paragraph that you're absolutely delighted with and you think it's poetry, absolute poetry, and your editor says it's not serving the book, it should go. Do it, because it's her interest is in making the book better as well. So to get back to the point, sorry, keep it on track, Doug. By the time I get to the edit stage, I have an editor who's already told me the story was either fine in the first place and it just needed a few tweaks, which is what happened with books 1 and 2. He said very conceitedly. The first drafts were actually pretty structurally okay anyway. Book 3 has needed some work, and she's fixed stuff for me. She's in the process of fixing stuff for me. I know when I get to the edit stage and it's about making the word sing, that's the bit I love. Because the one thing my stupid head can just about accept is that I write good words. I can write lyrically when I put the effort in. Oh God, I hate myself for having said that. That sounds
we got you to give yourself a compliment, and that's it. Interview done.
I'm going to regret saying that on video forever. But
no,
the editing bit, the making the words sing, making it vivid and making it emotional and engaging and stuff, that's the bit I love. To take a paragraph that's maybe a bit ropey, has the same word repeated 4 times in one sentence or something, or just is clunky, and making it and declunk it, I call it declunking it, and fixing it and cleaning it and then reading it again is just magical. I love it.
Allan, what do you enjoy about the process? Are you pro editing like Doug is, or is that not your favourite bit? Which bits do you really enjoy?
Well, he can hardly say no now, can he?
No, well, I don't particularly enjoy the editing process because I think, I mean, I've fully recognised the need for it, absolutely. But and you've got to spend a long time. In fact, I probably spend longer editing books than I do writing them initially. But the actual thrill of creating a narrative, I don't plot my books out, even although they're, you would think crime novels probably should be plotted, but I don't plot them. I start with a situation and I know the characters and I just let them go and see where we go. And that seems to work for me. I don't imagine it necessarily works for everybody, but that's what I do. So that journey of going through creating the first draft and the first exciting, almost discovering what's happening as you go along. That's the thrilling part for me. Then going back to it and polishing it, and as Doug says, making it sing, crucial. But I don't hate it, but I don't enjoy it as much as that initial surge of getting on the roller coaster for the first time.
The page in books where it gives you the publisher name, the previous books, the ISBN number, and all that sort of thing. Yeah, I absolutely believe the editor should get credited there, because my books. No, I can't say that. I can't say my books wouldn't be as good as they are. That's just wrong. My books. Oh shit! There's no way to say this without complimenting my books. My books wouldn't be what they are without Kate Smith. And the things that she's called out to me, and I've gone, oh my God, how did I miss that? Or, oh, good grief, that is so much better. Or, wow, just wow moments. I firmly believe that Kate, for my Super Ed, for sure, should get a credit on that page of books. I really believe that.
The thing is, whoever you work with, they are going to pick up things that neither of you can, because there are things that we don't pick up in our own writing. So it could be as simple as spelling and grammar. It could be a story plot, a plot hole, that in your brain you filled that while you're writing. You don't realise that you've left out this one little bit because your head has written the scene.
Yes.
So, and then it can go the other way as well. You might have really got into something that your editor might say, you've gone too far there. You know, this doesn't fit with the vibe of the rest of the book.
Yep.
So have either of you, start with Allan, have either of you gone too far or not far enough and had to work with your editor or a friend or whoever it is to, you know, to fix that?
Certainly. I mean, one of the challenges I have writing historical fiction is clearly that there's the possibility all the time of just getting it wrong, you know, having anachronisms, and it's often things that you never even think of. Like, for example, you know, I remember giving an early draft a character a name, and someone who read it, it wasn't a formal editor, it was just a friend, a beta reader, who came back and said, are you aware that this name was used for the first time in 1964 and your character is in 1930? And I said, well, no. And the name was Lisa. Now, that didn't strike me as a particularly, modern name, but there you go. And so there's the potential for that on every page in my book of getting it wrong. So, I mean, I have put a lot of effort into the research in it, obviously, for the medical aspect of it, the forensic side of it, the police side of it, for as much as you can know in terms of how police worked in the 1920s and 30s, and every other aspect about the world that they're inhabiting. You know, so there's a lot of research that's done to try and make that as authentic as possible. Because the last thing I want is a reader to be jarred, because you don't want to somebody be reading a sentence and go, oh, that doesn't happen, you know, or that's not there, or that didn't happen, because that takes them out of the story and stops them enjoying it. You want them just to be absorbed in it completely.
I'd imagine, though. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say. So definitely, I've had to respond to critiques and criticisms like that.
You mean from the people who should be starting every sentence with, "I think you'll find."
Yes. Well, yeah. But sometimes, you know, if they're right, that's good. What to know.
Good point. Yeah. Good point.
I'd imagine that knowing what year Lisa was first recorded is quite a, what's the word I'm after? It's quite a unique bit of knowledge. It's quite obscure, isn't it, to know that?
I think obviously this person read this and thought, that doesn't sound particularly a name of the period, and they went away and looked it up and then presented me with it. And there's other little things. You know, you have people walking past something and you mention it. A lot of my books take place in London, so there's obviously London has changed quite a lot since the late 20s and 30s, largely because of the Second World War. You know, half of it was bombed, but you have people walking by things, and people are definitely going to tell you, well, that's actually not there. You know, if it's a real place that you're trying to reproduce, albeit in a different time period, you've got to get it right. Otherwise, people do say, you do get the comments. I think you'll find, that Cleopatra's Needle is not there. That kind of thing.
Doug, for you, anything editorial that anyone's made you dial back or vamp up a bit? Vamp up? I meant ramp up, but
no.
We've gone vampy.
Well, yeah. Okay, so Kate pointed out to me. Well, I'll go back a little bit. Right, so for book one, no. Book one, I did shed loads of research into Police Scotland because I was determined that it was, aptly enough, it was April Fool's Day 2013 that Police Scotland came into being. And I was determined to reflect the changes that were made to Police Scotland. And that goes beyond them just having getting away from the old forces to the new divisions and all that sort of stuff. Things like the invention of major investigation teams. So that for a major investigation, if there's been multiple murders or something like that, then they swoop in from 3 different locations. I can't remember where they are now, and I should know that off the top of my head. So I was determined I was going to at least try and pay lip service to them. So I read Police Scotland Standard Operating Procedure documents, which was a challenge. And I got shed loads of information in my head and then sprinkled a little bit of it into book one. When it came to book 3, which is about firefighters, and I relied on the expertise of an ex-firefighter friend and a fellow writer called John Coughlin, who's he might hate me for this, but I don't care. His firefighter nickname was Tonka, which is brilliant, I think. So John Tonka Coughlin, he did a read through for me, and he fixed a lot of technical stuff that I just couldn't know. I did the research again, but there's not that much information. I did a lot of it. And I thought I had pared it down to just the technical information that was necessary to move the story forward. And Kate came back and said, "Do you realise you've explained that 3 times?"
Easily done.
Now, that may come from, if you'll forgive me one more brief digression, my entire life, because I thought the whole world was messed up and I couldn't understand the way it worked and I couldn't understand the way other people thought. I've had this terrible, terrible habit of saying everything 3 times in different ways, because I became absolutely terrified that I had said something and thought I'd communicated my meaning quite clearly, only to find out later that they'd interpreted it wrongly. You know, this whole thing about there's 2 parts to communication. There's what's said and what's heard. Yeah. So I got into a terrible habit of saying everything 3 times. And that was the magic word, 3 times, to make sure I got the point across. And Kate said to me, "No, make it vividly once, then make a reference back to it later, but much more gently. And that's it. That's enough." So that's what she told me to take out. The stuff that she told me to put back in, I've had some critics say, "What's all this nonsense about Malky's personal life and Steph's personal life? Because in book 2 or 3, she really goes through hell." Oh, but you need to buy them to get that. Some people reviewed it and said, "What's with all this personal life stuff? It just takes away from the story." And I'm kind of like, without any meaning to be judgmental or anything like that, I'm like, okay, you haven't got the point of what I was trying to write. I wasn't trying to write a police procedural where you find out something about the characters. I didn't want a soap opera set against a Police Scotland background. I wanted a book about people, the damage it does to them. What Allan mentioned earlier, and I mentioned earlier than that, the bad that people can do, that you would never, they themselves would never expect they could be capable of, but given dire enough circumstances, they get pushed into a corner, you know, and they can't do anything but. So it was Kate that told me to bring out more of Steph's backstory. I had ideas about it. I was only going to drip feed them in, but she suggested I make it an integral part of the story. So in book 2, you find out what her backstory is and what it is about that messed her up. And in book 3, it causes her more trouble.
Before we finish, because there's only about 7 minutes left, what I'd like to ask you both, starting with you, Allan, what you would like people who haven't started this series yet, what was your aim for how people would find Dr. Jack Cuthbert, as he's known, but what was did you have an aim in mind for how you'd like people to feel about him?
Very much so. I wanted to create a character, a main character that really people could lose themselves in. A main character whose life and travails they could become thoroughly invested in. That I wanted a character that people could cheer when things went well and could commiserate with him when they went badly. I was regarding him as a friend in a way, writing him, and I wanted to share him with other people. I wanted to say, this is the kind of guy that you would quite like to meet and you'd quite like to have him on your side. Yes, there's some, you know, on your first meeting you might sort of be slightly put off by him, but you know, persevere and you'll find out that this guy is somebody who you want to know in your life. And I really wanted people, I didn't want people just to like him, I actually wanted people to fall in love with him, frankly. I wanted them to really be completely invested in him, so much so that they actually want to know his story. And fortunately, quite a lot of the feedback I've had from the first book and the second book and the third book now is that people are interested. You know, people are interested in what happens, and they're already saying to me, "Well, does this happen? You know, will this happen? Will this happen to him?" And of course, you know, I kind of know what's going to happen to him, but you know, they're obviously, it's working, that they actually are invested in it. There's somebody, it's like having a relative or a friend that you're actually interested in, and that's what I wanted to create.
I always say to people, when we get to the next book, And I always say, don't answer me, don't tell me. I just want to know yes or no. Don't tell me. Do you know yet what's going to happen to this character?
Yes.
People really enjoy looking me in the eye and going, yeah. Knowing that I don't want to know. I don't want any spoilers. But I love knowing that you've got an idea of where it's going.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know what the last page of the last book is. Yeah.
Oh, that's intriguing.
Yeah, funnily enough, I know how Malky's story ends one way or the other. However far down the line that is, I know how his story ends.
Wow.
And I actually quite often, when I'm out, well, I don't cycle nearly often enough. A couple of my friends and my wife are going to be laughing themselves stupid right now. But when I do get out on the bike and try and lose some of this, I very often cycle past the very spot where, well, the last scene in the last book takes place. So, yeah. Before I get on to mine, Allan, I was grabbed by Cuthbert after the first chapter. Before the story, because the opening chapter, you know, is kind of like an introduction to Cuthbert, you know?
Yeah.
I was grabbed by him already. And I love the way he speaks truth to power in the most eloquent way he could at the time.
Yeah.
You know, he couldn't tell a judge, I've told you, you know, he couldn't use blunt language to a judge, but he does it his own way. I absolutely love the bits when he turns to the jury and gives them a look and trusts them to get his meaning. It's like, am I going to have to explain this again? Was it? Do I have to explain this again to the small man with the silly wig? Oh, just superb. Anyway, what was the question again?
Not a clue.
I'm out to the car in my slippers 3 times this week, so I can't trust my memory.
No, tell us about Malky. DS Malky McCulloch.
Yes.
I can't. You say McCulloch better than I can.
That's it. What do I hope my readers get from Malky? And
yes.
There's a great expression in one of my favourite movies of all kind, directed by Terry Gilliam, called The Fisher King, where he talks about the bungled and the botched. And I looked up once who originally said it, and it's just a fantastic phrase. And Malky uses it in one point in his local pub. How do I put this without offending anybody? All of us are fallible. All of us have our weaknesses. My work colleagues know better than anything that I forget things, that I misinterpret instructions sometimes. And they've been fantastic because they know about my, and they make allowances for it. But still, you know, my boss will ask me to do something and I'll misinterpret slightly what he's asked me to do, and I won't do the job completely right. So he just explains it to me again and he gets on with it. So that's my point. I've had the same job now for 23 years, so I must be doing something right, even though I cock things up occasionally. Real people cock things up. Real people have weaknesses. Real people are fallible. Real people succumb to their own weaknesses. But the people I admire are the ones that are self-aware to recognize that and try and do something about it and grow anyway. And more to the point, if they're also, there is a lot of me and Malky. If Malky ever finds out, well, he does in the course of book 1 already, those of you who have read it, he lets somebody down in book 1. He'll never forget that. It'll scar him forever. And I carry around regret from my primary school days. I'm not going to name the girl, but I upset the girl I took to the leaving dance massively. I'm getting choked up thinking about how much I hurt that girl, and I didn't do anything horrible to her. I was just a typical young boy, thoughtless young boy, and I'll carry that around with me for the rest of my life. And my wife has told me, "Oh, for God's sake, get over it." She'll have got over it, but I can't.
You've not had closure. You've not had that answer, and I suppose that's what you're striving for in the book.
Yeah, but it wasn't even that big a deal, really. I'm not going to tell you the story because it's not worth it, but it wasn't that big a deal. And I think I have the secret hope that if I can widen my presence on Facebook, and she's on Facebook, she'll see it and ping me one day and say, "Oh, well done." And I'll get to say, "I am so sorry what I did to you 40 years ago at school." Because until I do that, I feel absolutely shit that I upset that girl so much and I never got to apologise for it. And that applies to 2 or 3 things I've done during my life as well. Malky's got that. He tries to do his best. In book 1, and reviewers have called this out as well, he bends a lot of rules close to breaking point. But he does it out of the best intentions, and it happens incrementally. He backs himself into corners where the only way he can get out of it is to bend the rule just a little bit more, just a little bit more. Otherwise, people will get hurt. And it matters more to him that people don't get hurt than that he risks his career and his pension and bending the rules and all that sort of stuff, you know? So that's how I hope people will see Malky and come to care for him, because he's human, he's fallible. And I hope people, in the privacy of their own minds and hearts, will say, well, thank God for that. Another guy that doesn't do everything right, or if he does something wrong, it's for heroic purposes. He just did it wrong because he's an idiot, you know?
And he'll grow from it. And that's the point, isn't it?
That's Malky, and that's me. That in that way, Malky is me. Yeah, I'm trying to move away from me in successive books.
And I'm sure you will. As you both write, there are bound to be things that come to, you know, that happen to your characters that have been on your mind in some way, whether it's something that you've done, something that you've seen happen to somebody else, and then you work it out through the story. And that's the kind of thing that readers really buy into.
It's cathartic.
You know, yeah, of course
Writing
it is for the readers as well.
Yeah.
We have hit 8 o'clock. I'm so thrilled that I got to have this time with you both. Thank you so much. Best of luck with the debut prize. And would you both like to show the covers again and just give us a quick recap of what people are going to go and buy if they haven't already?
Yours are upside down.
Go on, Alan. Turn yours upside down as well. Go on.
No. Silent House of Sleep. First of the Dr. Jack Cuthbert mysteries. It's if you're interested in ebooks, then it's only 99p at the moment on Amazon. It's also available as a paperback, of course, as well.
Doug?
Book 1, book 2. I'm reliably informed that book 2 is less pish than book 1 was. So maybe by books 4, 5, and 6, I'll be decidedly unpish. But for some reason, people seem to be enjoying my pish. So.
You might want to reword that.
Yeah, my publisher's going to kill me.
I am just popping the links to both books into the chat now. So anyone who wants to go and buy them, which is all of you, obviously, go off and grab a copy. And then we wish you both the best of luck. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to all of the comments as well. Not managed to get to all of them. There are a lot.
Well, could I just say thank you to everybody else? Because the crime fiction club the crime fiction tribe is just the best on the planet. It's just unbelievably supportive. Nobody sees your competition except when you're nominated for a prize, but never mind. Nobody sees your competition. Everybody wants to help you succeed. Complete opposite to most people's working lives. And without my wife getting me medicated and a great team at work that kept me going through my working days and stuff, I wouldn't have done this without the crime fiction tribe. It just wouldn't have happened. I would never have developed enough self-belief. So thank you, everybody, for helping this grizzled old man achieve the one thing that he knew he had to achieve with his life, or regret it for the rest of it. Thank you.
Alan,
I would echo that.
Like to add?
Yeah, I would echo that. It's a hugely supportive community, and thank you so much to the UK Crime Book Club for allowing us to be on tonight.
Yes.
And anytime in the future, if you want to speak to us again, I'd be delighted to be back.
Yeah.
It's such a pleasure.
Yeah.
I think we'll all be fighting over who gets to interview you both next. So thank you to everyone who's watched. And again, best of luck to both of you and congratulations.
Thank you.
To everybody.